Facebook Tribe. Here we are live today with, as usual, a fascinating story that affects men, women, communities of color, children, families. And today we'll be talking about the fact that teachers in Washington State, as of the beginning of next year's school year, 2017, will be teaching starting kindergartners about what they call sexual expression, and I'll get more into it later as they progress in grades, how they will progress in this education. And we have two fabulous panelists with us today. First, Jennifer Marshall of the Heritage Foundation, who has appeared many times on To the Contrary and is a regular panelist. And we're introducing somebody who is new to us, but we hope to see more of in the future, and that's Victoria Rodriguez Rojas? Roldan, sorry. And you are with the National LGBT Task Force. Victoria.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Okay, and give me your title, what you do there.
I am the director of the Trans and Gender Nonconforming Justice Project.
Fabulous. Okay, so the question here as we start is obviously 6-year-olds. Is that an appropriate age to be talking to children about gender expression? We have heard stories at this point of many children at that age, even a little younger, telling their mothers that I may have been born in a boy's body or a girl's body, but I don't feel like a girl, I feel like a boy, and vice versa. So is this something that education needs to rush into to help children? Or, Jennifer, from your perspective, I presume this is not something you want taught in the schools?
That's exactly right. I would say no, this is not something that we should be introducing to children, particularly of the age of kindergarten. This is a new subject for all of us as Americans. We're wrestling with how to deal with this complicated issue, how to respect everyone despite differences, but it's complicated, even for adults. So why would we be bringing this into the schools and to children of such a young age before we as adults have even wrestled through how to deal with it? So this is an issue that I think should be left up to parents, and parents have a diversity of perspectives on it. Let's have schools be focusing on the academics.
Victoria, your thoughts, please.
To understand that part of those academics is health. School isn't just necessarily about teaching raw academics, but about empowering and equipping people to deal with life in general. And when it comes to gender expression studies, we aren't talking like many people will try to inflate it and claim that it's sex education or extremely graphic things. These are gender age appropriate things. For example, teaching children about why is society pushing boys to not wear pink or girls to wear skirts and so on. It's about teaching them the whys and hows of how society perceives gender, and thus better equipping them to understand that gender is not necessarily a binary of male and female, and it improves the ability for them to understand themselves better across the years as they grow up.
I think we've gotten into even a number of controversial things even right there. What is age appropriate? What are stereotypes that are associated with male or female, and how should we, the idea that there is not a binary understanding of sex, that's going to bring up diversity of opinion among parents, and parents should have a say in their children's education there. There's enough for schools to be dealing with right now in terms of academics, and schools aren't doing a good enough job in those areas. Let's leave these controversial cultural matters outside.
And Jennifer, what's the fear? You are a member of the conservative religious right. You're a very God-fearing person. What is the fear that perhaps if this is taught to kindergartners, that one child who never thought about having a problem with gender expression, meaning being in the wrong gender body, we'll start thinking about it, and that more and more people will become transgender as a result of this kind of class?
I think we all realize that children are very impressionable, and they're still sorting out their understanding of the world, of themselves, of their relationship to their family, to the opposite sex, and all these other things. And these are very sensitive topics on which many parents have a diversity of opinions. And that's we should respect parental rights. We should respect religious freedom. Many Americans are from faith convictions that believes that sex is a created biological reality. Public schools should respect that and not try to override what parents are teaching, what religious traditions are teaching in that regard.
And Jennifer, one more question to you before I go back to Victoria. Why is this not then a matter for local school districts to decide?
It is. We've said a lot since the federal government issued the edict for all schools across the country. It is certainly much more of a state and local matter than it is a federal matter. When it comes to the local debate, I would very much support the right of parents and citizens to argue in the way that I'm arguing here, that these be matters left to parents and to homes and other associations.
Victoria.
I will say, starting off, if children were that impressionable and indoctrinable, all the Catholic school children that are now adults would be wearing nuns' habits and clerical collars. It is simply a matter of deconstructing and teaching, for example, things as simple as we grow older, as children grow older, what is gender? It is as simple as teaching the things that are essential in our society and deconstructing the stigmas and prejudices that lead, for example, to a rape culture, that lead to domestic violence, that lead to sexism, to structural sexism in our society. It's not just about the trans community in general. It's about gender equality. It's about respect for women. It's about the structural sexism and gender inequality that exists, and a society that will blame victims of sexual assault, that will not punish the perpetrators of assault, like we saw recently in Stanford University. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as teaching our children about the society that surrounds them.
Well, you know, we had Sarah McBride of the Center for American Progress on the show a couple of weeks ago, and after the show I was discussing with her the percentage, the numbers of transgender Americans, and I said, I looked it up, it's 0.3%, and she said, you're right, in the adult community. In the child, among American children, it's 3.7%. So since it's mushrooming like crazy within a couple of generations, do you see that as reasoning for making it more necessary to have these to teach this kind of class?
It is even more necessary because that is a sign of the times. As we become a more tolerant and inclusive society, it means that more and more people feel confident in coming out of the closet and being who they are and living a life that is true and authentic to their identities. And thus, that means, for example, in hotlines and resources for children and teenagers that identify as LGBTQ, we are starting to see situations where they are more and more willing to come out, but then find themselves in abusive homes that are not willing to accept that. Thus, these resources are even more necessary, both for the children and for the families. We're talking about the most vulnerable of the vulnerable populations within the transgender community, and we need to work on, as we have all spoken, and my objective is a point in which someone isn't afraid, no one is afraid when they come out, when they admit to themselves in front of the mirror, I might be trans, I might be LGBTQ in general.
I just want to read to you both what is going to be taught at what grade. The as part of an aspect of sexual health titled Healthy Relationships, kindergartners will learn to distinguish between, as you kind of pointed to, Victoria, safe and unwanted touch. They will also learn to recognize people, have the right to refuse giving or receiving unwanted touch. In third grade, they'll be expected to explain that gender roles can vary considerably and understand the importance of treating others with respect regarding gender identity as part of the self-identity component of sexual health. Gender identity is defined by the state as someone's inner sense of their gender. Now, Jennifer, we have done stories on the show in the last couple of months saying that millennials, now in their 20s, have been raised to believe that there are not just two genders. There are as many as 6 or 8 genders, or forms of gender expression. What do you think about this development?
I think that this is just a very new topic. There's a lot of confusion around it. There's still a lot of science to be discussed and a lot of research to be done. We're talking about children who have not yet gone through puberty and their self-concept. So these are just really delicate matters, I think, when we're talking about that population. And to ask a student to recite the view of gender that is held by the public school system, I think, is problematic, particularly when that's still very much a subject of debate for adults. So again, this is a matter that I think should not be added to the school curriculum. We should be teaching respect for all, regardless of differences, and that's going to include all kinds of ideological differences as well. I think it would be better to be focusing on that principle in general than trying to develop these myriad categories.
But on the other side, do you think if the Stanford rapist had been taught about the difference between wanted and unwanted sex, touch at that age, do you think he may not have participated in that horrendous violation of a drunk woman's body that he perpetrated?
The issue of protecting children from assault is a distinct one, I would say, from the kind of gender ideological discussion we're having. So, and I think that schools are already helping, and parents and everyone is being equipped to have those kinds of conversations with their children about how to guard against unwanted advances from other people. I think that's a distinct issue, a very important one, but distinct from this gender dysphoria discussion.
And Victoria, your final thoughts.
I would add that this isn't just about that. This is essentially a life-saving issue that means life or death for many transgender students. Gender expression education is also about teaching tolerance and acceptance of the fellow students that may not fit the traditional stereotype that is expected of gender. It means starting to educate from an early age against the bullying, the nearly universal bullying, harassment, and even assault that transgender students face that then drive them to drop out of school, to be unable to complete an education, into homelessness, and so forth. So,
can you tell me a little bit about your experience in kindergarten and early public school grades? Were you bullied?
While I was the victim of a lot of bullying, I would make it clear that this isn't just about me, but about the vast, enormous majority of the trans community that face that kind of bullying, that face bullying that drives them to homelessness, that drives them to drop out of school, and that has lifelong consequences. Trans people are 4 times more likely to be living on $10,000 or less a year, are much more like 1 in 5 have experienced homelessness, and over 70% have experienced, 90% harassment in the workplace, and thus have a much harder time finding employment, even more if you haven't been able to complete your education because you are being driven to dropping out of there. 41% of trans people have attempted suicide It is for a reason, essentially. And this goes beyond the personal story of anyone. With us, it's about the entire trans community.
And your final thoughts, Jennifer?
I think this is just beginning as a debate for our country. We've got policy to be sorted out at the federal, state, and local level. It's extremely important that the voices of parents are respected. It's extremely important that the voices of those who have experienced sexual assault are respected and heard in this as well. They are concerned about not transgender individuals, but others who would exploit new policies and having access to bathrooms and so on. They're concerned about those situations. So that's a real discussion that we need to have.
All right. Thank you both. This has been fabulous. Really appreciate your time, and we'll be doing more in the future. Thank you so much.